This is the Nightshade Cult, a podcast macabre.
We bid you welcome, enter freely and of your own will.
I'm Nick Grimm.
And I am David Graves.
And we will be your horror hosts for this dissection of Francis Ford Coppola's 1992 Gothic horror, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Good evening. This is a classic. This is probably the classic.
I don't know, the classic. I don't know how you set that paradigm.
As far as vampire movies go.
You think? I don't.
Okay,
I mean, it's up there. Top five.
Dracula's the classic. This adaptation is one of the best ones.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's been a while since I watched it, and I mean, I forgot how much I do enjoy this movie.
When I said this is the classic, I meant Dracula in general. This topic.
Yeah, Dracula is.
We've seen a lot of Dracula movies through the years. Mm-hmm. They come out with a new one every few years, pretty much.
Yeah, I do think this is probably my favorite. I think
it's a really good one.
It is a really good one. I think it adapts the book well, better than most. You know, it takes fewer liberties. It does take some liberties.
Some pretty big liberties.
Yeah,
but in some places it's extremely faithful, and then in other places it makes the story a little more digestible because the original novel was in the form of letters back and forth.
Yeah.
And so you never had a point of view of Dracula.
Yeah.
And this movie very much is the book from Dracula's point of view for the most part.
Yeah, that's true. Largely, yeah.
It becomes about his love story with his wife, who he then crossed centuries of time when she's reborn as Mina Harker.
Right, which none of that is really in the book.
Yeah, this is all Coppola's fanfic.
Yeah, well, you don't really know exactly why he fixates on Mina. It doesn't get into it. So I do like that the way it combines, the historical vladtepes with the fictional Dracula and kind of makes an amalgam.
Which is not in the novel at
Correct.
all. It was implied. It left it to your imagination, but here they just they directly say he's the old Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, who before the book Dracula didn't have the cultural footprint that he did after the book.
Oh,
it was much more. This Transylvanian Count was a much more obscure sort of folk character before Stoker's novel.
Yeah, I agree. This was a book that changed a lot of things. But when this movie came out, they made it for only $40 million, and it came in at over $215 million at the box office. That was a huge, smashing success. In fact, this is. Not only was it a financial success, it was a critical success. This is the only Dracula movie ever to win an Oscar, and it won 3 of them.
Yeah. Well, technical Oscars, though. It didn't win. Yeah,
it got Best Costume, Best Makeup, and Best Sound Editing. But It was also nominated for 4 others, which are the big one. There's Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, Best Cinematography, and Best Art Direction. So those are big nominations, even though it didn't win.
That cinematography one, it probably should have. I'd want to see who else was in the running,
I don't
because
know who won that year.
The cinematography in this movie is incredible. This came out, while we were teens. I was probably high school and you're in middle school, I'm guessing, in 92.
I didn't see it when it was right out of the gate. This isn't the kind of movie I would have my parents would have taken me to, and this was before I had a job.
Yeah.
So
I saw it
later on.
I definitely saw it later on VHS.
In the 90s, for sure.
I can say this movie facilitated a fair amount of teenage hanky-panky. There was definitely neck biting and things like that went on with this movie in the background.
Yeah, the Brides of Dracula scene is
inspirational
to a young fellow.
I would say it inspired both hanky-panky with friends and solo activity.
Yeah, that was a crazy. That's a crazy opening part. This movie, the whole first act is really just it. it comes at you fast.
It does. It does.
And we'll get into that, into the nitty gritty of it. But let's go ahead and do our news segment.
Okay.
Dark Tidings.
Dark Tidings.
We're going to roll it off. See who goes first. I got a 9.
Nat 20.
All right.
First up, I've scrolled past this bit of news multiple times because I don't find these sort of announcements all that exciting, but it just kept coming up in my feed over and over again, and so I have to talk about we've got our first look at Apple TV's Monarch Legacy of Monsters, which is their new TV series that's set in the legendary Monsterverse, so the Godzilla versus Kong universe. And they sent us, they've some pictures of the series stars Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt Russell, and they're playing the same character set 50 years apart. So Wyatt is playing the young version of this character in the kind of the aftermath of the atomic tests that awoke Godzilla in the past, and then Kurt Russell is playing the older version of the character. And if you want to get their copy here, they say following the thunderous battle between Godzilla and the Titans that it leveled San Francisco, and the shocking revelation that monsters are real, Monarch Legacy of Monsters tracks 2 siblings following their father's footsteps to uncover their family's connection to the secret organization Monarch. I'm into it. Looks really good, and they're not going to skimp on the Godzilla. We see a little Godzilla in the images they showed. Okay. And so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I don't really I don't do Apple TV, so I probably won't watch it. Nothing has compelled me to
get that Apple
add
TV.
Another service. There's just too many.
There is too many. Yeah.
Maybe if someone bundled them all together and sold you a monthly package.
Comcast is jumping up and down. We already did that.
Exactly. Yeah. So my first item is this has been announced for a little while, but it's going to be dropping right after this episode on October 3rd. Okay. But you got Universal Monster Movies getting their new 4K 8-disc collection launched. It's available for pre-order on Amazon right now. It's $129.99. You get Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Invisible Man, Bride of Frankenstein, Wolfman, Phantom of the Opera, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. Not only do you get a disc for each movie, and they're all remastered in 4K, you get a really nice book with it that has full-size movie, not full movie poster size, a full page movie poster, original movie posters for every movie. It also had the Dracula DVD, interestingly, has the Spanish version of Dracula that they filmed at the same time as the 31 classic.
Which is... Most really people will say that the Spanish version is the superior one to the...
I don't speak Spanish.
It's subtitled.
But I mean, do you think you can... Yeah, you probably enjoy it, but it's not going to be Bela Lugosi.
Yeah. I've owned... when they first put out really nice DVDs of all these movies, I bought all of them. Of course you did. And they had so many extras. None of the releases that have come since have compelled me to repurchase them. But
4K, dude.
4K. I don't have a 4K player. I need to invest in one.
You have a PS5.
I do. Does that play 4K?
Yeah.
I don't have a 4K TV. I can tell you that.
Well, that's fine. You should upgrade that every, 6-10 years anyway.
No, I have a cathode ray tube Sony Vega TV. It weighs 500 pounds.
I'm going to probably get this, even if I don't get it for my birthday or whatever, which is coming up.
Oh, nice hint.
But I will probably buy it on my own, just because I figure we're gonna do most of these movies, and I don't own them, and it's gonna cost me a little bit of money to rent them each time. Every time I pay to stream rent, whatever the hell that means. So I might as well just have it, and I think the book will be worth looking at.
Oh yeah, and
it's a pretty good deal. I mean, $130
for that many movies.
8 movies.
And I don't have Phantom of the Opera. That's one that was not in that original run when I was purchasing them.
I mean, come on. less than $20 a title.
Yeah,
that's a good deal.
That's definitely, I think that's worth purchasing for sure. Okay, my turn again. I also have some more monster movie news.
All right.
I saw this trailer for a movie coming out on Netflix called El Conde, which is Spanish for the Count. It's Pablo Larraín's dark vampire comedy. It's a black and white film. It reminded me a lot of Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse. Okay. Aesthetically, it looks old, like it looks like a movie from the 30s. And the premise of it is that Chilean dictator Pinochet was a literal vampire. And he's coming to the end of his 250 year lifespan, and is kind of settling accounts and trying to get his affairs in order so he's going to finally lay himself to rest into a long life of terror that he's led. It looks very darkly funny. Like it's a comedy, but it's a very dry.
I love vampire comedies.
Yeah, dry, bleak comedy. And it looks gorgeous. I'm a sucker for that black and white Gothic horror aesthetic from the 30s. Mm-hmm. And so this, I also don't speak Spanish, so I didn't know what El Conde meant. But just kind of scrolling past the image on YouTube, I was like, well, that looks like a cool vampire movie, and so I clicked on it. And so this drops on Netflix September 15th, which will be 2 weeks ago by the time you hear this, probably. But maybe you haven't found it yet, so it's right on time for you.
Oh, yes. I think that a lot of these news and even recommendations sections are evergreen.
Yeah.
It's if you haven't got to it yet, it's good.
Yeah. All right, what's your next piece?
All right, this one's this one's unrelated, but it is to monster movies, but it is dark and definitely gore related because it's Metalocalypse: Army of the Doomstar.
I saw that.
They got a movie, and it just came out as of this recording. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen it yet, but this is a return of Brennan Small, and we're returning back to the right after it left off. There isn't a lot of time passing in the continuity, and at the same time that this dropped at the end of August, this is Death Album 4 has dropped as well. So we get new music from Death Clock. We get a new movie from Death Clock. I'm definitely going to watch it. I was thinking about watching it today before you came over, but it was like $20 to stream it. And I was thinking,
That's a purchase price, right? Like you own it,
but
after
they didn't
that.
offer it for rent.
Okay. Yeah. So because it's too new.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how they
Because if it was a $4 rent, I would have done it in a second. But I balked at $20.
At 20. And I mean, and not to be like that, but you can bet on that Adult Swim's a Warner Brothers property, right? This will be on Max in a couple months.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's like, how bad do I want to see it? $20 bad? Is that how bad? You have to do that math.
Yeah.
Maybe. I might want to see it $20
bad.
bad.
I pinch the pennies.
It is really weird.
Because other times I'll just blow $40 and I won't even think about it.
Yeah, we're reevaluating the value of things because we're used to getting them for so cheap or inexpensive, and so the reality is $20 is not all that much money anymore.
It's 4 gallons of gas.
Yeah. Oh, just when you put it like that, it sounds ridiculous. It is. It's not a full tank. It's just a little bit. So especially if you watch the movie more than once, you get $20 worth of enjoyment out of it.
I definitely love this franchise. I've seen all the rest of it.
Where did the show leave off? Do you remember?
Well, so there was basically there was like a little, there was a 2013 special called Metalocalypse: The Doomstar Requiem, and this is called Army of the Doomstar. Basically, they need to write a song to save the world. That's the plot.
Bill and Ted did that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is not original. It's just it's the Lampoon death metal version.
Yeah.
Which I'm game for it.
Okay. All right.
So that's it. What are we drinking today?
Yeah, I got us a little Unholy Sacrament today, a little of the Sangle what I'm trying to say blood of Christ in Romanian. The Sangle lui Christos, or Antichristos, I suppose. This is the Diamond Collection Claret from Francis Coppola's winery. It's their signature wine. The crown jewel of their Diamond Collection showcases flavors of plum, black pepper, and cocoa.
Okay.
I'm not much of a wine aficionado, but I like this. And claret is old school slang for blood, so it seemed like the one to go for.
Yeah, it's dark red, and it's quite good. I mean, I'm not a wine drinker either.
It's dry. It's not a sweet wine at all.
Yeah, I'm not big on wines, but I'll definitely drink this. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I know. Coppola movie, Coppola wine. It just goes.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back with our dissection of Dracula.
Welcome back, Cultists. It's time to dissect Francis Ford Coppola's 1992 film, Bram Stoker's Dracula. When a centuries-old Romanian count purchases a decaying abbey property in London, he is reunited with the seeming reincarnation of his beloved late wife and sets about terrorizing everyone in her orbit while he attempts to woo her.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of things to be said initially on the decisions that Coppola made with regard to the storytelling and the writing, because he was extremely intentional on all of these things. He made up such in-depth storyboards that he actually set them to motion and made a little animatic of this movie, so that everyone who was playing a character in the movie or doing anything on the movie saw his vision in moving pictures.
Yeah, so Coppola is really one of the, I hadn't got that in my notes, but he's one of the first people to really do animatics. He really sort of pioneered that technique.
And he's a book enthusiast. He's read this book so many times. He was really, that's one of the things that he has been quoted in many interviews, is that he doesn't like how most adaptations of this movie ignore important things from the book.
Yeah, and he had everyone in the cast read the book, and he said, if there's something in here with your character that's not in the script that you think should be, bring it to us and we'll add it in.
With the exception of Anthony Hopkins, who refused to read the book.
Anthony Hopkins doesn't do extra work. That's something.
He also refused to rehearse. He wanted to do everything fresh.
That's interesting.
And in retrospect, Coppola was pissed about it, but then he said it actually made his parts really fresh, and it put the other actors giving true reactions to his kind of, I'm not going to call it like over the top acting, but it's very extra.
It's very, I think his version of Van Helsing is very over the top and eccentric.
And you can see the co-stars just sort of like, whoa.
Yeah. He puts people on their back foot. And I like that. Like there's that scene where he kind of like, he grabs Quincy and like humps his leg and he's like, you old coot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting that he didn't rehearse though, because he did do the, all the actors went to Coppola's estate and had like a retreat with each other and did very like intro to improv sort of exercises with each other and stuff. And he's definitely there in all those videos.
Yeah, and he may have done some level of rehearsing, but Coppola said that he did not like that Anthony Hopkins did not do the stage rehearsal style because he wanted it to be kind of theatrical. He wanted it to be like theater, and Hopkins was not about that. He wanted spontaneity. He didn't want the other performers to know how he was going to do it so that he could get raw reactions on film.
That's really cool.
And I really like that. But getting back to what I was talking about with the writing and the storytelling themes, we mentioned it earlier. This is a lot more in depth than the book with regards to many things. There are a lot of plot lines that are much more detailed. They're a lot more. They're not a lot more in depth and a lot thicker, especially regarding Dracula's motives.
Yeah, which are completely absent in the book.
Yeah, he's just kind of a bad guy, and in this, he's relatable. And even if you don't agree with him, you understand why he's doing it.
Yeah.
He believes these things even though they're weird.
Yeah. So James V. Hart, the screenwriter, I thought it was an interesting thing. In one of the interviews I saw with him, he said that he wanted to make Dracula the romantic hero that he truly was. And I thought, well, that's not how everyone would characterize him, but I can see that that's how you see him from your writing. So I thought that was a really interesting take.
Yeah, and I think that is 100% what was accomplished. They made this character into a tragic, romantic character who is simultaneously the villain and kind of the anti-hero.
Yeah, he's definitely the protagonist of the story.
Yeah, you root for him sometimes, but other times you're like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so Hart's screenplay had been kind of bopping around for a little bit. And it was actually winonaryder. She was cast in The Godfather 3 and had to drop out, and she didn't want to burn bridges with Coppola. And so as she was bowing out of that project, she brought the screenplay to his attention, and she was like, maybe this is something we could work on together in the future.
Yeah, she kind of cast herself as Mina Harker.
Yeah, and he's like, okay, yeah, I really like that idea. And
honestly, I'd forgotten that she was in this movie because in my mind, this is Gary Oldman's movie. Like,
it is. Yeah.
I mean, so I just think, oh yeah, Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's Gary Oldman's movie. Anyway, so I'd forgot that she was Mina Harker, and I like that character a lot from the books. She's really smart. She's super capable. And in the 31 version and even the later Hammer stuff, she's kind of done dirty. Like but in this one, she's really good.
Yes. And I saw an interview with Coppola where he was, and it's probably one you saw as well, where he was complaining about how Mina and Lucy, a lot of times they're interchangeable in other adaptations.
And Lucy is rad in this.
I love Lucy so much. I still think I take book Lucy and Mina over movie Lucy and Mina. Yeah. But yes, I love both. I love both those girls. These are this movie does better by them than almost any other Dracula movie.
Yeah, I can't say that I've seen all of the Dracula movies. I don't know anyone who has.
Not yet.
God, there's so many. Are we going to do Dracula 2000?
Oh, geez. That's when that'll be late in the run. That's when we're really scraping.
Number 700.
Yeah, we're really scraping the barrel when we get to Dracula 2000.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really like how they chose to storytell this. And another thing that goes kind of with that is the intentional choices that he made with regard to the Gothic atmosphere.
Oh yeah.
He wanted everything to be extremely creepy and dark, and they use all kinds of movie magic to make that happen.
Yeah. An old school movie magic. Like it's very much of the era, like of the early 20th century technique.
Yeah, and they also made this thing obviously supernatural. In previous editions of this movie, or previous tellings of this story, I should say, he really hides that he's immortal. He presents himself as a regular man a lot. But in this, like, just straight up, when Keanu gets to the castle, it's not 10 minutes before he realizes this guy's
this guy's a creep.
This guy's a vampire or something.
And I love all that stuff, like because they're very important moments in the book, like where he crawls down the wall and stuff like that, where Jonathan's like, oh, this is all very weird. Like, they recreate those scenes very well in this movie, and they seem weird if you haven't read the book. Like, why is he doing that?
Yeah.
But it's I think those are just very, very cool pulls from the book.
It seemed like Coppola really wanted to just get directly into the shit. He didn't want to do the slow build where you're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Why don't we see the Count during the day? Why won't he eat with us? I think this movie is like, okay, we all know, every person watching this knows Dracula's a vampire, and so we're gonna get straight into the vampire business.
Yeah, for sure.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I called it a love letter to Gothic horror, and that sort of filmmaking. Just he's dedicated to doing all these old school practical effects.
I love practical effects in this movie.
Doing everything the hard way, in camera, not faking anything. And it's just, like I saw someone say that this was a prestige director looking down their nose at the genre, and I was like, oh, not at all. This is like a celebration of genre. It's not at all like disdainful or sort of like I'm above this. It's like I can do this as good as anybody.
Yeah, I definitely think that this was him taking his skills and his knowledge and his abilities and really making this movie to the best of his ability, the way that he thought it should be made, because he loved the story. Like, he talked about how he used to read this story to campers at a drama summer camp that he worked at as a counselor. He would read it to the kids so they would go to sleep. He really has a love affair with this story. And
Definitely.
I think that anybody that thinks he was looking down on this story is not familiar with the topic.
Totally. Thematically, I think it wrestles with some of the big themes.
God.
It wrestles with God. Yeah, like in episode 0, I was talking about romantic Satanism. This is romantic Satanism, right? Like where he renounces God because God. He was out fighting a war for God, and God was like not paying attention to back home while he was out there doing it. And that's how he becomes Dracula in this, right?
Yeah, he's cursed.
He renounces God and stabs the cross, and it starts bleeding, and he drinks the blood. It's all very, very over the top and theatrical, and it's like, ooh, this is good.
And it's not book stuff.
No, yeah, it's not book stuff, but I approve.
Cool. Yeah, watching the outtakes of this where you got Gary Oldman stabbing the cross like a dozen times, like running up to it, and he's trying like an overhand grip, an underhand grip, one hand, two hands. He stabs it so many times, and he misses a bunch of times.
And we're being honest, he's a big baby about the armor. Like he's like, I can't move in this.
Well, it's costume armor. It's made of like plasticized resin and stuff. Like, I wear steel armor. You can move if you just practice a little.
Yeah, it's not super heavy. It is clunky, but it's not heavy.
Yeah.
But
it's probably hot though.
Oh yeah, I bet it is hot and under the lights and everything. But the final result, it all pays off. Like, he gets that great performance, and he does hit the mark. He stabs the sword in there, and it's just all that stuff, just so iconic. So
I like that they flesh out the legend of how he became a vampire and how it passes along. And I think that stuff is not explicitly stated in the book, but it happens.
It's not talked at all. Yeah,
but it's very clear. Like, it's that they do the mutual feeding, and that's how someone becomes a vampire.
Yeah.
We see it with Lucy first. And this is really interesting choices that they made in order to spell certain things out.
Yeah.
I think if we're talking about intentional important choices. One of the things you got to talk about is the lighting in this movie, the way that it actually looks. Yeah. And that goes right along with themes as well, because colors.
Oh yeah.
They must have been like buying all the red gels available for all their lighting. It's insane.
The color, really strong color story, right? Like the way that color is tied to different characters. Obviously, red is Dracula's color, and as Dracula exerts influence over other characters, you start to see them dressed in red.
Yes.
Like Mina's always dressed in green with like a leaf motif on her dresses and gowns and stuff, until Dracula starts seducing her, and then you start seeing her in the red dress, and like as he gets his influence. And same with Lucy, who she starts out pink. Lucy's already a little saucy when we meet her, but as Dracula puts more and more influence on her, it's redder and redder, until eventually she dies, and then they bury her in her wedding dress. And it's like, but that color story is just woven throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, it's really cool how they were incorporating that, and it's not exactly obvious in the very beginning. I was just like, oh wow, there's just so much red here, and then later on, oh, it's normal, and then oh, red again, and then I start getting what's going on with this color story. I thought it was really cool, and I guess part of that is some of the choices, the way that it's all cut together and shot. The cinematography in this movie is pretty insane. The way he uses extremely saturated colors, it makes it feel almost like you're in a dreamscape.
Yeah,
and then
for sure.
Sometimes it's just extremely low lighting, and you're squinting to see it. And, and this was before Game of Thrones when they turned off all the lights.
For sure. So Michaelballhaus is the cinematographer, and
Pulp Fiction.
Oh, did he do Pulp Fiction too?
He did Thelma and Louise, Pulp Fiction, and The Departed,
and Goodfellas, I think.
Yeah, he's got a pretty big thing.
He's got a serious IMDb. This guy shot some classic films. And you need a cinematographer like that because they're doing all these in-camera effects. Like, you need an absolute camera master to shoot this stuff. Like the sequence where Jonathan he's arriving, going through the Carpathians and coming into Transylvania, and they've got Dracula's eyes like rear projected into the sky behind the carriage. They've got I really enjoy how those subtle things, how Dracula is part of the land. Yeah, and the Jonathan's like journal or whatever, the text from the journal is reflected onto his face, and they've got the scenery moving behind the carriage while the carriage is rocking. Like it's a very complicated, like multiple in-camera effects going on at the same time sequence that now you would do digitally. You would just take those digital elements, you take the text and project it, you take the eyes and project it, and they're doing it all in camera just to prove they can. Like, it's a very show-off kind of movie. Like, they said we couldn't do this. We can do it. We can do whatever we want. We're masters of our craft. We know how to do everything. Yeah, I think that was pretty obvious right in the beginning, and it almost feels like there are moments in this movie that almost feel psychedelic. Because of how, definitely, like, layered and I don't even know the right word for it, but it feels like you're looking through 3 or 4 layers of things at the same time and seeing different pictures almost. It has to do, I think Coppola talks about Dracula affects everything around him. His magical presence affects the laws of physics around him. Yeah, like shadows break free of their owners. Oh, I love the shadow stuff. Like, it's so good. Yeah, and you know, again, that's old school, like 1920s style special effects. Oh yeah, but it also still works. It's still like, you watch it and you're like, wait, how do you do that? You know, like it's CG, of course. Yeah, it's like, how do they? You have to have 2 guys in the costume, but you have to hide the light. Like this, there has to be 2 light sources that you can't see one of them. You know, like it's pretty complicated to have one person not cast a shadow so a second person can cast a different shadow that
Yeah.
looks almost like it matches the person.
Yeah, I really
Bonkers.
enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed the costume design in
for
this
sure.
In this film. Everything was just so detailed, and before we get to Dracula's costumes, everybody else just looked so awesome and period authentic. It just looked really, really good
This is
for this era.
a delicious movie. Like it's sumptuous. It's a meal on every level. Eiko Ishioka is the costume designer, and she won the Academy Award for Best Costume Design, rightly so. But she was not coming from a background of costume design. She was coming from a background of production design. And Coppola had worked with her on other films, and he said he wanted the costumes to be the sets.
Yes.
Like the costumes are the focal point and not the scenery around them, and that's why he wanted a production designer designing the costumes.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of that the performers in this movie are the diamonds, and he wants them all to be just surrounded by perfect settings.
Yeah.
Like a perfect piece of jewelry or something along that line. He basically wanted the people to be absolutely the focus and completely notable. But I mean, that's not to say that the sets weren't also excellent.
They're also incredible. Yeah.
The costumes really stuck out. And I love the many looks of Dracula. There are so many Draculas in this movie, and there are no bad ones. Like, I love the old nobleman where he has the long white hair.
Yeah, and the big buns.
The buns.
Yeah.
I love the young, dapper when he's in London walking around. I love the Wolfman, the Wolfman, the Man-Bat Nosferatu-ish one.
Yeah.
That might be my favorite. I love the costume, the practical effects on that.
It's so weird because I actually think there's too many iterations, but I couldn't cut one. I love all of them.
No, they're all needed.
You know which one? I'd cut the one at the end where he's got the bat face with the white hair when
it's like the amalgam.
Yeah, and right before his death scene, and then he goes back to his handsome face when he's dead. I could cut that. We could, if we got rid of one, it's the bat with white hair.
Not the wolf one.
I love the wolf one. I mean, you could argue that's a little gratuitous. Some of that scene. But it's a pretty cool Wolfman costume. I couldn't lose that one either. I'm very attached to all the iterations.
Yeah, I really think that this might be my favorite Gary Oldman movie.
Oh man,
it's so good. He does so many things. He's a monster. He's a gentleman. He's a hoary old man. He's so many things in this movie.
It's a real tour de force, and it's interesting when you watch the behind the scenes stuff because he's got a lot of conflict with Coppola. He had some sort of incident with Winonaryder at some point during the production where she did not want to be around him anymore after that. So, and I guess he was going through a divorce while they were making this movie, and he was going through personal things. But the performance that comes out of all of that turmoil, not to glamorize that sort of method acting thing or whatever, like the dark side of method acting that everyone always talks about. It did make an incredible performance. All the stuff he was going through.
He was able to channel some of his stress and anxiety and anger into his character and make that really come through on the screen. And it's pretty amazing. I think that all the different versions were excellent. Getting back to the design and stuff, I think that the sets were really good, and I really liked the stuff in Transylvania, although it was super dark and it was hard to see almost anything. But when they got to London, I just felt like it was just brought to life. It just felt so good. I mean, I went to London earlier this year, and it just felt like London. I don't know if they filmed there or if they were on soundstage.
So because of budgetary reasons, part of the deal was this was going to be an all backlot and soundstage production. So the whole thing is filmed on the MGM lot, and that means they built all these sets. The production designer is Thomas E. Sanders, and these are just incredible large sets. We cover the gamut from decrepit castles to a sanitarium and a garden labyrinth and Victorian manor houses, and they're all richly appointed with furnishings and everything. And it just made me appreciate the level of craft, because nowadays they're filming in the volume where it's an all digital background, or they're filming on a green screen and putting digital assets around them. These sets are incredible. And I saw a zoomed out behind the scenes thing of Dracula's castle, and they had a big pool of water that they're reflecting the lights in, similar to how they do in for the lighting in Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And it's just that level of technicality and detail is just awesome. I'm running out of superlative adjectives to use for it.
You could say real good.
It's awful nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty awesome. I was also really impressed with the score on this film. I was, I don't even know how to say the name, Wojciechkilar.
Let me see. Wojciech, I think.
Wojciechkilar, something like that.
Yeah, he's Polish.
It's a really good, just super dark, atmospheric. It builds tension really well, and then it releases. And I feel like the score is super good. I thought it felt suitably old school, which is really important.
It is. It's very, I said in my notes that it sounds like Danny Elfman's Batman score and Akira Ifukube's Godzilla score had a baby with each other.
Okay.
It is bombastic and sinister, and then occasionally it's whimsical and romantic. And it feels like from a yesteryear kind of Hollywood. And it is woven very well with Tom McCarthy and David Stone's sound design, which they won an Academy Award for their sound design and editing.
Yeah.
And I always feel like the best sound design and the best scores marry each other. There's sound design in the score. Like when you listen to the track, I think it's called Ring of Fire, which is the time when Van Helsing puts the Ring of Fire around Mina, and Dracula's brides go and kill the horses.
Oh yeah,
that's
a really grim scene.
The horses screaming is part of the score there, and it's very well integrated with each other.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments in the movie that use those sound effects, like the howling of wind, or the kind of the chirping of bats, the creaking of floors.
Oh yeah,
all of that stuff is really well. It's really well added, and it's tasteful.
Yeah,
it doesn't stick out and make you think that that's overdone or cheesy. It just sounds really good. And the opposite of that is the film's use of silence is really good.
Yeah.
I really like it when characters are in a scene and they don't say anything.
Yeah.
They're just, the actors are acting. And Dracula does that so many times where he just kind of locks eyes with someone and will just kind of close in on them. He's doing the whole vampire thing. And then the emotive acting of the others, like Keanu, when he's being moved in on, he's he doesn't say anything. He's got the heebie-jeebies. He's trying to be proper. He doesn't want to mess the deal up with the count.
Yeah.
But he also is like, what the fuck, man?
I know, like, watching it with Lisa, she said, she's like, he really gets in people's bubbles. And I was like, Romanian people are like that. Oh. You know, that I'd say that is very accurate to people from that region. They get up close to you when they talk to you and stuff. And it people from the West find that very disconcerting.
Yeah, I don't love it. I don't love it at all.
Yeah. We haven't talked yet about hair and makeup, because it's massive. Because again, Academy Award winning. It won for the Academy for best hair and makeup. Michelle Burke did the hair and makeup design, and then she won that Academy Award along with Greg Cannon and Matthew Mungle, who are more the special effects makeup, like the prosthetics and everything.
Yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be called out, because these characters always just look amazing.
Oh,
Even in the, like, in death, you can tell that she's dead by the makeup and all of these different things. I love the practical effects in here, like Dracula has hairy palms, and it's just casual. That's casual hairy palms.
Yeah, and that's one of the first sort of moments where Jonathan's like, "Oh Jesus!" Like,
dude, he's faking the monkey.
Yeah, and he like, you know, Keanu gets a lot of criticism in this for this performance, and
they call it flat or whatever.
Some of his deliveries are not great. His accent's not great.
His accent's not amazing.
Yeah.
But I'll stand by Keanu. He's awesome.
He's our patron saint on this podcast, and his performance, like his emotive physical performance, is excellent.
Yeah.
It's just the accent hangs him up a little bit. But I'll be honest, Winonaryder's accent is not great, and Anthony Hopkins' Dutch accent is in and out. He forgets he has it 2/3 of the time.
Dracula is the only one with a super consistent accent.
Yeah, he's committed to that Romanian accent, and I think he does pretty good. That's a pretty good. It's a little close to the Bella.
Yeah, I think he added a little bit of that Hungarian style in as an homage.
Yeah. But it's good. It's strong and it's consistent. He sounds like the same guy through the whole thing.
Yeah. And I really think that sort of thing is, you probably, a casual observer of this movie wouldn't notice the little nuances like that. But when you're analyzing it, like the makeup, the accents, the tiny little things.
Yeah. We're kind of getting into that, talking about the performances. We've already talked about Gary Oldman a great deal.
Yeah, he pretty much gives the performance of a lifetime in this role, and it's a shame he didn't even get nominated.
Yeah.
I mean, Hopkins got nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but I really think that Gary Oldman should have got a nod for this.
Yeah, has Gary Oldman won an Academy Award? He's known for doing these sort of transformative performances.
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting is that he goes full spectrum.
Yeah.
From one side, he's extremely menacing and scary and threatening and mean and just kind of like this cruel guy. And all the way to the other side where he's friendly and seductive and he's sympathetic. You understand his pain.
Yeah.
And he just goes the full gamut of emotional responses that he evokes.
Yeah. Like, you know, what's a standout to me is he does that monologue to Jonathan about, you know, his race dying out and having the blood of Attila in his veins. And it's straight from the book.
Yes.
And, you know, I've seen Christopher Lee do the same monologue, and it is completely distinct from the way Christopher Lee does it. Like, it's a much more passionate, like he's waving a sword around, and like he's kind of like between like rage and despair, you know, while he delivers it. And it's like it's a real tour de force. Yeah,
it's really shocking and surprising when he just draws the sword.
Yeah, and it's the same like cross stabbing sword from earlier.
Yeah.
Right? So Gary Oldman won Best Actor for his portrayal of what's his name? The British Prime Minister Churchill in Darkest Hour.
I haven't seen that movie.
I never have either, but it's one of those unrecognizable, like where he's in a fat suit and like full face makeup and everything. Or I don't know. Do you think he gained like 50 pounds?
Probably not.
He's the kind of guy that would do it. But
we're
getting off track.
I think that the next performance that I would talk about after Gary Oldman would probably be Winonaryder.
Definitely.
As Mina Harker. She's pretty sensational in this role.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she gives a really nuanced performance. She seems extremely relatable.
Yeah.
She's a good person, and then she's slowly corrupted by the devil and taken down the route where you're like, no, you don't want to cheat on Jonathan.
Yeah.
Like
and she's like, you can tell when she's wavering, right? Like as she goes between the two poles or whatever, when she's red dress Mina or green dress Mina. And yeah, like the way she portrays that dichotomy and the level of influence at any given time, it's very good. She's a very young lady when they're making this movie. This is not long after like Beetlejuice and stuff.
Yeah. And this is a much better role than in Beetlejuice. I mean, she does a great job. I think that she's able to combine the character being really strong and forceful, like when Dracula is following her in the city when he first arrives, and she basically is like, "Good day, sir."
Yeah. Oh yeah. She shuts him down, and then like he hits her with the puppy dog eyes, and she feels bad about it.
Yeah.
Like she's like, "Oh, this poor bumpkin from the east has come here, and I just shunned him. He just wants to go to the weird cinema thing that we have in 1900."
Yeah, and I think that she does an awesome job in this role, and this also might be my favorite Winonaryder role because she's just really good in this movie.
Girl Interrupted is a pretty incredible performance.
It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah,
it's not my movie. This
is your movie. Yeah, that's a girl movie. But it's a very good girl movie.
I have seen that movie. And it's a good movie. So the next one on my list is Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing, and he gives this. He is extremely professorial, and he is a mansplainer.
Yeah,
like
that's that Dutch directness is what he's portraying there. He's like, during your infidelities with these demonic women, tell me, did you ever drink their blood? No. Good. Van Helsing is great.
Yeah, and Anthony Hopkins doesn't get much credit for this, but he's actually also the principal narrator for this movie. The voiceovers in the beginning and all this stuff.
And the priest, the Orthodox priest in the opening sequence.
Yeah, so he does a lot in this movie, and he got an Oscar nomination for it. He's a legendary actor. Everyone knows
he just won one the year before, so it'd be greedy to get another one.
Yeah, he always brings a strong like a force of personality to every role. He just has this natural charisma.
Yeah.
I love it when he kind of does the Hannibal Lecter thing.
Yeah. Where he's explaining the motivations or whatever. Yeah.
It's just like he's just putting on a clinic in this movie. It's funny because you'd think that Gary Oldman is like just steals every single scene, but then when Anthony Hopkins gets on camera, he's also trying to be a scene stealer. It's just like Coppola got some real top guns for this movie.
Real heavyweights, yeah. I don't think I have anything else to add. Anthony Hopkins is excellent, even if what he's in is terrible. Like when he's in Transformer Rise of the Dinobots or whatever it was called. No, The Last Night. Transformers The Last Night. That's the one with Anthony Hopkins in it. That movie's
Does he play a Transformer or a dude?
No, just a guy that knows a lot about Transformers.
Oh, okay.
he shows up like towards the middle third of the movie to explain how Transformers are part of the Camelot myth or something.
Oh God.
It's awful, but he's great doing it. Like, he's great
Sure.
delivering the lines, and you're just like, oh, this is just nonsense. I can only listen to it because Anthony Hopkins is saying it. That's the only way I'm getting through this. I've got next Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker.
Yeah, I think he gives a really good performance. He's a bit of a blank slate in this, and he seems young and impressionable.
Yeah.
The character is supposed to be young and impressionable.
Yeah.
And I think that he is he's just excellent in this role. He gets some flack about his accent. He gets some flack about occasionally I don't know, like some people say he overacts and some people say he underacts in this movie.
I think for many, many years, people love to pick on Keanu. And I've never really...
I will never do that.
Yeah, I've never bought into it. I've always loved him.
I am an FBI agent.
Yeah, it's...
Come on.
Anytime, if we dip into a Keanu accent from time to time, it is done with love. It is.
Oh, yeah.
We come to celebrate Keanu, not to bury him. It's... I mean, it's fair to say his accent is not great, but I think his performance is good, and he has range. Like, he does stunts when he escapes from the castle.
Yeah.
You know, him just doing his little walk around the castle and the stuff that drips up and all of the just sort of taking in the weirdness of the castle. That's all really well performed.
Yeah, I love that creep-tastic stuff in Transylvania. It's really, really good.
Yeah, Coppola said that they wanted to cast a matinee idol type actor for the role of Jonathan, and that Keanu, he said, if all of us were in the airport, Keanu's the one that's going to get mobbed by girls.
Sure,
and
I think
so
that's still true.
That is probably still true, even though he's an old man. Still, or oldish, middle-aged man, late middle age. 50-something, right? Not quite
think,
60.
Yeah, I think he's in his early to mid 50s. But I think that the younger ladies would go to Keanu, but then all the ladies 40 plus would be going after Gary Oldman.
That really depends. It's a certain kind of lady, and I knew a lot of goth girls who this was one of their Tiger Beat posters on the wall was Gary Oldman in the top hat.
Oh, not with the two buns.
The Grandpa Drac? Yeah. No, not the Mr. Burns Dracula was not there.
Not the man bat.
For special girls, the monster lovers out there.
Monster lovers, I like that.
Yeah, it's probably the Wolfman.
The
It's
Wolfman.
probably the one.
Wolfman plus Lucy. That's the match made in heaven.
Yeah. Anyways, my point was, I think Keanu gets some undeserved kicking for this role. I really like him in it. And he even gets like some sword play and stuff towards the end of the movie. He's got a lot of range in this movie.
Yeah, this role of Jonathan Harker is it's much diminished from the earlier versions of the movie. Whereas in the 31 Dracula, Jonathan Harker's role is much bigger than it is in this movie.
So in the 31, they combine him with Renfield.
Yes.
And make it into one role.
And Renfield in this movie, I have him later in my notes, but Tom Waits gives a really great performance.
I love Tom Waits in this movie.
But this was actually a cuttable thing because Renfield never made an impact on the story.
That's true.
And so if you'd cut every Renfield scene, it wouldn't have changed anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you had to lose something, you could lose Renfield. He is in the book. He's a character from the book.
And if you
and I'm a Tom Waits fan, so I'd hate to lose him. But you're right.
I think he's really creepy, and he's kind of a spectacle in the role.
Yeah.
And this reminds me very much of a Shakespearean thing, whereas like in Midsummer Night's Dream, when it cuts away from the main scene and then you get the wandering drunkard who gives his monologue and his observations and things, and he's like a pitiable character. Shakespeare does this a lot with minor characters. There's some in many of his plays, and I think in this version of Dracula, that's what Renfield is.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
He's basically like a between major scenes, you get this solo performance of this kind of interesting character that's casting development on Dracula.
Yeah, it's another kind of not as over the top as Anthony Hopkins, but still kind of a little bit of an extra, little more salt on it than it's not a naturalistic performance, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it's fun. I really enjoy him in the movie. I'd like to lump these three guys together. And that's Richard E. Grant as Dr. Jack Seward, Cary Elwes as Lord Arthur Holmwood, and Billy Campbell as Quincy P. Morris. I love these guys so much.
I love those guys too. I'm really glad that Quincy was in the movie. I think that the token American character is hilarious.
He's like a cattle baron, you know?
Yeah, and he's got the big Arkansas toothpick knife.
Yeah.
But I think that of the three, really, Richard Grant as Dr. Jack Seward was just excellent. He probably deserved a little more recognition than he got. He was simultaneously kind of eccentric and flamboyant, but also he gave some good levity every now and then.
Yeah.
He brought an energy, and I really liked him in every scene.
It's a very subtle performance. He's a morphine addict, right? And they don't really bang on about it. They just show it. He looks a bit unhealthy. We see him getting into his works, and I don't know if you actually see him shooting up. I think you see him shoot up one time. But it's just part of the character that he's hooked on. Yeah. He's hooked on the stuff. And
NBD.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was very common in the period, and especially as a physician, he has access.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just love, between the three guys, they have this cool bromance with each other where there's a way I think the typical way to play this is these guys hate each other, right? Because they're all vying for the same girl.
Yeah.
But instead, they have this really great friendship with each other. And I love the way they play it. And I love that it makes it into the movie, because I don't think it's in like any other version of the story.
Yeah, this is pretty unique to this one. And I do think it was interesting that Lord Arthur Holmwood was played by Wesley from The Princess Bride.
Yeah, the Dread Pirate Roberts. Yeah.
I mean, I just think that was great.
He's such a stereotypical posh British guy, right?
Yeah,
like he's
just
like
perfect, tall, blonde-haired, good-looking guy.
Yeah, he's like, what are you doing to her, man? You know, like he's just like, he's that guy. Like all three of them are, worthy prospects for our dear Lucy, right? And they're all just completely different kinds of guys, like, and then they have just this cool friendship with each other. I just really like it. It's one of my favorite things from the story.
Yeah, they don't have to be toxic about this whole
thing.
They
are not. That's something that really, because you read a lot of stuff from the past, like from that era. I guess this is probably Edwardian, not Victorian.
Yeah, it's later.
But you look at it and there's upsetting stuff all through it, and you have to constantly be telling yourself like, well, it was a different time when people were bad. And then you read Dracula and it's like, oh, there was some enlightened people. Even back then, there was people that thought women were real people and worthy of equal consideration in the world, and men who weren't just absolute monsters and dogs to each other. It's like there were refined and I don't know, enlightened. I guess that is the right word. Enlightened people, even back in those terrible times.
And it's only terrible by our sensibilities. At the time, these were normal behaviors. You know, I don't know. You don't really have to say that, but those people weren't terrible people. They just had weird upbringings and they were poisoned by these patriarchal ideas.
Yeah, but there was people pushing beyond those.
Oh yeah. Not everyone was Jonathan Harker, who was true to his lady and a good man.
Yeah. So next up, Sadie Frost as Lucy Westerna. Great. Incredible performance.
Yeah, I think she doesn't get mentioned enough when they talk about this movie. The character of Lucy is really important, and I think that she did a great job. I especially love the scenes after she gets made a vampire.
Yeah,
she just plays such an excellent vampire. She's just like so beguiling. It's just awesome. And the hair and makeup people, they really make her look legit. It's so good.
The stuff where she's in her wedding dress with the big frill. And Ishioka said it is inspired by the frilled lizard, and she imagined Lucy kind of moving like a lizard, but she couldn't do it holding the baby because in that sequence she's carrying a baby around, and so she couldn't crawl on the floor and carry the baby, but she does manage to give like an inhuman performance, right? Her movements, and she does that sequence where Van Helsing intimidates her with the cross back into the thing, which they film in reverse so they can have her move unnaturally, right? They film her getting out of the coffin and then play it
following the cross,
basically. And then play it in reverse so you see her move backwards in that unnatural way. And the other one, Lucy moment that jumps out at me is when the wolf is seducing her and bringing her out into the labyrinth, just like the way she goes out with the silk kind of trailing in the wind behind her while she's enchanted, and Mina's trying to get her attention and bring her back inside, and she plays enchanted excellently. She looks like she's being mind controlled.
Yeah, Sadie Frost is awesome in this role.
Definitely.
It's really, really good. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention the three brides, Monica Bellucci, Michaela Berku, and Florina Kendrick. I'm sure I said a name wrong in there, but
I think you did pretty good. Yeah.
They were awesome. They were great. Super spooky, super sexy, just awesome.
The only name I know of the three of them is Monica Bellucci, who she's in The Matrix Reloaded, I think. She was in quite a bit of stuff in the 90s. Really cool physical performances, like the way they move around.
They move all sinuously and fluidly.
Yeah, sometimes serpentine and sometimes like an insect. And
all three brides have their own personalities.
Yeah.
I think that it's reductive to just see them as sexy time characters or whatever, because these are really interesting characters, and there's other movies do more with them. They don't get a big role in this one, but I think that they're very well done.
I always have to give poor Jonathan a boo-hoo to you, Jonathan, when he's like, oh, they drain me constantly, I can hardly do anything, and he's being so sad and mopey about it, and you're like, this doesn't look so bad.
Yeah. I'm sure that
other people have had it worse. There's other vampire castles you'd rather not be in.
So many.
Dracula took pretty good care of you, left you with some people to look after you. You should be thankful Dracula's the castle you wound up in and not a meaner vampire.
Yeah, he's got very, very caring wives.
Yeah. I mean, they do kill those horses, though.
Yeah,
that's savage.
That's pretty brutal. And they bring the baby
Yeah.
to Dracula, like in front of Jonathan.
That was the final moment where Jonathan was like, this is too far.
He's like, vampire sex with 3 ladies, okay, but a baby?
Too much.
Yeah, he really draws the line.
Yeah.
There. I mean,
that's a good place.
I mean, yeah.
That is also, it's like, Jesus, at least go out of the room.
Could you at least hide this from my view?
I'd like some plausible deniability.
I'm going to pretend that baby just came for a visit.
Yeah. And then you took him back to his village.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's all the notes that I have for my performances, because that's kind of almost everybody.
Yeah, likewise. I guess we're getting to our wrap up. What's your personal highlight?
So my personal highlight is Gary Oldman.
Okay.
That's
broad, but I like it.
Yeah, and I call out a specific moment, but
Okay.
generally speaking, he's absolutely charming. He's creepy and he's neurotic in this role.
Yeah.
And I think that he just gives, like I said, a performance of a lifetime. And this was just a killer role for him. My favorite moment, actually, of him, if I was choosing a Dracula, is I really love Man Bat Dracula, but there's not a lot of drama there. So I'm going to go ahead and go with right after he arrives in London, where he's got the dark glasses and he's trying to, he goes out on the night on the town with Mina. I feel like Gary Oldman's in peak form. The gray top hat, the round glasses.
When he first arrives in London, or when they go on their date?
The whole sequence, you know, because they're one right after the other. Basically.
We never called it out, and so since you brought that up, I want to talk about. There's that moment where they shoot on an old-fashioned silent camera, like a hand crank.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so you get that flicker of that early 1900s camera until. As he walks around London, it's shown in that sort of hand crank camera style until he sees Mina, and it he comes into reality.
Yeah.
And that's just beautiful. Like the way they shot that.
It's really cool. And this sort of vampire, it reminds me very much of Louis and Lestat in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
Before it all burns. And this is my kind of vampire.
Yeah.
Just the dapper gentleman vampire. Like, it's my favorite kind of vampire. And Gary Oldman just kills it. So that's my personal highlight. How about you? What was your personal highlight?
My personal highlight, and this is it's kind of a long sequence, but I'm going to say the whole thing. And with the understanding this is one of the most well-trod paths in all of cinema. It's been done 1,000,000 times, going all the way back to Murnau's Nosferatu in 22. But the whole sequence of Jonathan, his carriage ride up to Dracula's castle, introduction to the Count, and his slow realization of the severity of his situation.
Yes.
Just the whole thing, and it's crazy to pick a scene I've seen so many times, and I've seen so many good versions of it, but this is this sort of the ultimate version of it. In a way, it is the synthesis of every version, right? It is the sort of glamour of old Hollywood with the visceralness of the Hammer era, and everything brought together to be the ultimate version of this sequence. And it's the one now I think that people remember. There's a reason why the Simpsons Treehouses of Horror does this version of Dracula. It just it supplanted all of the versions that came before it.
It's one of those things that just like in music, when you have bands or whatever who iterate on a style, and eventually it gets to the point where you like the air quotes derivative version better than their influences, it's because they couldn't exist without the influences. You couldn't have this movie, you couldn't have this movie without all of those other versions of the movie. Those were folding the steel of the perfect Damascus blade.
It is totally,
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. I love that scene. It's so good. It's so
bloody
creepy.
wolves chasing me through fire.
Yeah, I love Keanu. He's so good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with you. What worked for you?
The absolutely stunning aesthetics of the film. And that's a big umbrella, because I'm including the costumes, the makeup, the set design. You said the lighting, and I left that out, but I shouldn't have. It's just visual.
I say that with every movie, almost.
It's visually sumptuous. Like, it is just, there is so much stylistically going on, and it's not, none of it's wasted. It's all intentional, and it's all just excellent. And I love to watch this movie. It's like one of these movies, like, when I watch it, like, I'm just like, oh man, that's how you fucking make a movie, man. Yeah. Look at that. The integration of the historical vladtepes into Stoker's novel, I think that's become standard now. Like, any sort of new version of Dracula, it's understood that he's Vlad the Impaler, centuries onward from that. It adds a level of depth and humanity to Dracula that usually he has not been given. And I think that's part of why this version has endeared itself to so many people, and why it has endured since this movie. And then my final thing that works for me is the Quincy Jack Arthur bromance. It's one of my it's one of my favorite things from the book, and I was just so happy to see it, and to see it portrayed well and respectfully, and like, you know, like you have these three guys. They're all in love with the same girl, and they're competitive with each other, but they're never toxic about it. And then when she dies, they all completely dedicate themselves, like, to doing right by her, which means desecrating her body. Like, that's a pretty intense thing for three bros to go do.
Poor Arthur, he's the one who has to do it, because he was the chosen one.
Yeah, and it's like, that means you need to drive a stake through her heart, and you need to cut off her head. It's brutal. And then they dedicate themselves to saving Lucy. You know, like, they couldn't saving Mina. Yeah, they couldn't save Lucy, but they can save Mina, and ultimately Quincy dies saving Mina. So I just love that subplot of those three guys and the way the movie handles it. What about you? What works for you?
So your first comment you said was overly broad. I'm gonna go overly broader.
Okay.
I'm gonna say I like the vibe.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Vibe is broader than aesthetic.
Yeah, I like the overall feel and style of the movie is so 90s.
Yeah.
And I love the 90s media.
It's not just it's Gothic 90s.
Yeah, it's Gothic 90s, which like Gothic horror, Gothic industrial, Gothic punk, all these things were huge in the 90s. Yeah. We had so many big movies that were Gothic movies.
Yeah. I saw The Cure play in 1997. And there was a couple up in the balcony behind us, essentially dressed like Dracula and Mina. Like, the guy is...
Yeah, that's amazing.
He's in this, like, you know, like 3-piece Victorian suit with a top hat, and they had opera glasses.
I love that.
And I was like, Jesus, Dracula's over here.
So I just love this 90s Gothic style.
Yeah.
It stuck with me through my whole life. Like, I seriously love it. And another thing that worked for me is justice for Mina. Like, I mentioned it before, 1931, Dracula does not give her any justice. She's just sort of an also played. And I think that super important character in the book. So I thought that because she was one of my favorite perspectives in the book. I thought she was, her letters and her diary entries and stuff were the most interesting.
Yeah.
And so I really like that she had some justice in this movie. And then finally, the most important thing I think that worked for me was the changes that Coppola made to the story that made it more comprehensible, more digestible, and modernized the story. Yeah. First thing, he added in the truth that he is Vlad the Impaler. Stoker hid that from us and made us conjecture, because Vlad is not one of our is not a perspective character at all.
Right.
He becomes a perspective character in this movie. And so another thing that changes the story is the fact that he becomes sympathetic. He's humanized in a way that softens him. He's no longer a monster villain. He's a tragic character, and you understand what he's doing, even if you don't, even if his motives and actions are not excusable, they're at least comprehensible.
Yeah, understandable.
It's logical why he did it, and he's a character that you can feel sorry for him, and understand what's going on, even if you think he's evil, and he's pretty evil. And so I think that that is all of those changes that were made. They're now Dracula canon.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like that's now the way he's portrayed in every movie since, and pop culture in general. So how about what didn't work for you?
You know, the first thing I had in my notes was I still, even though this is the best version of it, I still think Lucy and Mina get a little bit of short shrift. I think both of them are portrayed in the book as being much more intelligent, like
especially Lucy.
Yeah, Lucy I think is very simplified in this, where they're both sort of the time very educated young women, like that they read, you know, like they're intellectual and pretty enlightened individuals, and I don't think we see enough of that. But that is with the understanding that this is probably the most justice these characters had been given up until this point. Like, it is the most elevated performance or portrayal of them. It just still could be better. Probably my bigger criticism would be, I think, the pacing of the movie when you get into the sort of middle third of it, like when Dracula begins seducing Mina. I think the movie gets a little temporarily tangled up in its various plot threads. It's got a little bit too much going on, and it takes a while to untangle them and get the story rolling again. And so I feel like it just sort of bogs down for a little bit there. You know, I mentioned this earlier, the final criticism I would have is that even though I do love all the various Dracula forms, sometimes it seems excessive. Like this is Francis letting his son Roman, who is the special effects director, just letting him go wild with makeup sequence with the bat guy and a wolf guy and a half bat wolf guy and all of that stuff. I just feel like there's more of that than there needs to be to tell the story. It's one point where it gets maybe excessive, but I like it. Like, you know, even though I think it's too much taste wise, I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
Final thoughts?
Or what about what didn't work for me?
Oh, shoot. Sorry, it's the Coppola wine. It's got me a little...
I actually agree with you on the pacing.
Okay.
But in my opinion, the pacing was... it was too much of a supernatural blitz from the start.
Oh, okay.
It didn't build any creepiness. It was really fast. Like, this was the speed dating version of Dracula.
Okay.
And we didn't get any of the build. We didn't get any of that Jonathan Harker putting two and two together. It's really just, he arrives, it's fucking darkness. Yeah. Like, there's nothing.
Do you think that's because they put that prologue
they give it all to you in the beginning. Yeah. And that's an intentional story choice. It could have been done as a flashback. It could have been done as a out of sequence story.
Yeah.
I feel like they did that is a change from the book that I don't like.
Okay.
In the book, it's a lot creepier and it builds before you get into some big time supernatural shenanigans. In this movie, it's from the start, like stabbing the cross and drinking the blood and all that shit. It's just like crazy. And I would have preferred it to be a little bit more of a creepy gothic horror,
like more of a ramp,
give me a little ramp. Don't just onboard me like it's like shotgunning a beer.
Yeah.
And so that was the number one thing. The other one is near the end, the final act, I guess, it got a little too fantastical for me.
Okay.
It became truly a fantasy story. I understand it's a fantasy story, but there was some psychedelic moments where it felt like they just went a little too far with the filtering and the perspectives were swimming almost.
Yeah.
And I feel like it wasn't grounded enough.
Okay.
And that's kind of a through line for the whole movie. I think that I would have enjoyed a little more grounding. And I think where you get that in the book and in some of the other adaptations is with Jonathan.
Yeah.
Jonathan is kind of your grounded straight man. Like he's not, obviously he goes through some shit, but he stays pretty North Star. And we don't get a lot of Jonathan in this movie. And so that's probably why it feels like it goes off the rails.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so those are minor criticisms, and it's really just my personal taste. Like, it's not like they did something wrong.
Yeah.
It's just not to my liking.
Okay.
So now, final thoughts and your rating.
I mean, I'm a strong 4 on this. I think that's probably, it's a bit above what the critical consensus on the movie is. But I just love this movie. And like, I had sort of, I think sometimes the public narrative will start to overwrite your personal narrative if you're not paying attention. And, I've seen a lot of people that don't rate this highly in the Coppola filmography, right? Like, this is not one of his best films. And you start to internalize that idea. And then you get back and watch it and you're like, wait a minute. No, I actually love this movie. Like, this is really an incredible, a masterpiece, a flawed masterpiece maybe, but still, like, this is cinema masterpiece. So
that kind of brings up the ratings, our meta system of the ratings. This is episode 1. We rate on a 1 through 5. We've never given something a 0.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're saying that it's a masterpiece, and you're saying that you absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So why isn't it a 5?
Well, because of the things like the pacing issues.
Okay. There were more flaws in your mind than a 5 could justify.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But like sometimes, like say like a movie like Repo Man's a 3-star movie that I absolutely love.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like you could love a 2-star movie even if it had something that you loved about it. But my point was I was expecting to not give this a 4-star. I was expecting to be more in the 3 range. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh, no, never mind. This is a strong 4. I could not go lower.
Okay. Interesting. So I looked around, and of course I looked at all the ratings online and what everybody gave it. And they generally agree with what you're saying. And, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to start off the Cultists with imploring them that what you think and how you feel matters. If you love a movie and it's your favorite movie of multiple actors in there, their greatest performance in your mind, and you think that it is the best Dracula movie, it can't not be a 5.
Okay.
Because Dracula is the greatest of vampires. This is the greatest of Dracula movies.
You're doing a lot of legwork to justify your 5.
I think, that's because we're on episode 1. And
okay.
I think that the Cultists deserve validation of their feelings toward this movie.
Yeah, and if you feel like it's a 5, then it's a 5.
It's 5.
Yeah.
And I think that this is definitely Gary Oldman's best movie for me. And I think this is Winona Ryder's best movie for me. And I think it's I don't even know. It might be my favorite vampire movie. It's certainly up there.
Yeah.
I like lots of vampire movies. Actually, I think Let the Right One In might be my favorite vampire movie.
Oh, jeez. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's the best.
Need to see that, yeah.
We should do an episode on that.
Okay.
It's I love vampire movies, and this is one of the best.
This is your favorite. This is better than Interview with a Vampire.
I don't know if it's my favorite vampire movie. It's my favorite Dracula movie.
Okay,
for sure. And I think it's right up there with any of the other really good vampire movies. So I'm going to give it a 5.
Okay.
Because I think sentimentality matters in my rating.
Okay.
I'm not as objective as you.
Yeah.
You're a little bit more film school, and I'm a little bit more
go with your heart. Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think feelings matter.
This is a movie about following your heart.
It really is.
Yeah.
If you need to stab a cross and drink the blood that pours out because you feel bad.
Yeah.
This
is a movie about men not managing their emotions well.
Hey, I'm going to say that me loving a movie is managing my emotions well.
Absolutely. I support your indulgent 5.
All right. So let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back with the Vault of Darkness.
Welcome back, cultists. Before we delve into the Vault of Darkness, we like to ask that all initiates of the cult follow us on your favorite social media platforms at Nightshade Cult.
If you've enjoyed this content, help us grow the cult by sharing it with like-minded people and leave us a review wherever you listen.
So, what are you pulling out of the Vault of Darkness today?
I wanted to pull out a vampire story.
Of course.
And I found one recently by accident. I wouldn't say recently, maybe a year ago.
Okay.
But then there was a sequel, and it just recently came out this summer, and so it reminded me of it. It's a vampire story by Travis Beacham. He's the writer of Pacific Rim.
Okay.
And he's also written several other pretty good movie treatments and whatnot.
Okay.
And he comes from that Hollywood thing.
Okay.
And so he wrote a story called Impact Winter.
Okay.
And
I think you've talked about that before.
Yeah, I've talked to you about it before. I've never talked about it on the pod.
This is our first episode.
This is our first episode ever. And this is a really interesting scenario. The little blurb is, it's the near future and 7 years since the comet hit the Earth and blotted out the sun. The world is a dark, frozen landscape, and then beastly creatures emerge and take over. Can they really be vampires? And so you have perspective characters that are survivors living in an old castle in the British countryside. It used to be a museum.
Okay.
And it follows them, 2 sisters, and this is an audio drama. This is not just a regular audiobook. You can't find a print version of it. The only way to listen to it is on Audible. And this is a fully cast audio drama with a different actor for every character, and they're quite good. It's very well done. It's a high production value thing where you have sound effects and the whole deal. Normally, I don't like that. I don't prefer the audio drama version, but this one I do. It comes out really well. The first story, they call it season, or just Impact Winter, and then the next one's called season 2. So season 1 is basically, it's about 5 hours worth of content, and it follows these characters and their encounters and discovery with the undead. And then the season 2, it elaborates and you learn more about the world of vampires and what's going on and why did the comet come and all of these different things. And it's pretty cool. Like, I went looking for more. I was like, is this a book?
Yeah.
I'll read the whole series. This is really cool.
But it isn't?
No, it's original content for this audio drama.
Okay.
Travis Beacham wrote it and he produces it, and it's available on Audible. And here's the real killer. it's included with your subscription.
Oh, it's one of those.
Season 1 and Season 2, you get about 10 and a half hours worth of content, and you don't even spend a credit on it.
That's pretty cool.
If you've got an Audible subscription, this is a no-brainer because you already paid for it, and it's a really good vampire story.
And Audible comes with Prime, correct? Like it's your Audible subscription is part of your Prime subscription if you have one. I think
it depends. There are different types of Audible subscriptions where you get different like credits per month and stuff. Because if you are just going with Prime, you don't get any credits. But I think you actually can listen to. I think if you have Prime, you can listen to the included things that don't cost credits. So
gotcha.
I think if you have Prime, you can listen to this too.
Yeah.
You just got to install Audible on your phone and then sign in with your Amazon account.
Because there's a lot of stuff that's included with your Prime, like Comixology and things like that people they
don't even know they get.
Yeah, they don't know they're already paying for this thing, basically.
Yeah, if you are, I mean, I'm just going to bet most of the cultists have Prime, just because that's how it is. And you should listen to this. If you listened to an hour and a half worth of Dracula talk, you're going to love Impact Winter.
Totally.
So what are you pulling out of the Vault of Darkness?
I am pulling out more vampire stuff.
All right.
So
this is my jam.
Yeah. So over this last year, there has been 2 Dracula movies from Universal. And both of them have, for whatever reason, failed at the box office. But I thoroughly enjoyed both of these movies. So I want to highlight them because not enough people have watched them. So the first one, the one that came out first earlier in the year, was Renfield, directed by Chris McKay and written by Ryan Ridley, from a story by Robert Kirkman, creator of The Walking Dead. And this is set in the modern day. Stars Nicholas Hoult as Renfield, and it's like a horror comedy that's using the vampire familiar relationship as a metaphor for codependence and unhealthy relationships.
Oh, I loved that movie.
Yeah, and it's over the top kind of comic booky violence, like a Deadpool type movie.
Absolutely schlocky.
Yeah. Nicolas Cage gives an unhinged, really inspired performance as Dracula. Awkwafina is in it. Ben Schwartz. It's a lot of fun. It's if you like Gothic horror and you like the sort of Deadpool kind of humor, it's a mashup of those two things. And I just thought it's just a really fun, over the top horror comedy. And it's streaming. It's on Peacock, which you can watch with ads for free if you don't subscribe to that. And just not enough people saw this movie. So I'm encouraging you to go out and see, or to stream that on Peacock. And then the other one that came out just more recently here, just a month or so ago.
Morbius.
No, Morbius. No. The Last Voyage of the Demeter. And
I was just reading about that, actually.
And so that's directed by Andre Overdahl. It's like looks like a Swedish name.
It's still in theaters as of this recording.
Yeah, so go see that in an empty theater like I did.
Dude, you've already seen it. I want to see this.
It's really good, and it's a class. It's based on the chapter from Dracula, The Captain's Log,
Chapter 7.
Yeah, and you could watch Coppola's Dracula, pause it.
When they get on the ship.
Watch this entire movie and then resume Coppola's Dracula on the other side of it, because it just fits neatly in there. It really does not contradict Bram Stoker's Dracula very much in any way. It adds some new characters in that are not described in the Captain's Log.
Sure.
But it's a good monster in the house sort of horror story. I think Ridley Scott's Alien. It's people trapped on a ship while a monster kills them one by one. And it's brutal. It's dark. It doesn't pull punches. Like, there's people that you're like, are they going to kill that person? They kill them, and they kill them extravagantly. And it's brutal. It's a brutal movie. And it's a very good Dracula movie covering a part of the story that's not well explored. Like it's a part that basically every other Dracula fast forwards through. So it's diving in deep on the captain's log segment of the story. And again, this movie, it's bombing in the theater. Like, it's not doing well. It'll probably be on Peacock in a month or so if you want to wait. But this movie should be doing better than it is because it's a really good horror movie.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I was looking up stuff surrounding Dracula and modern releases, and that movie immediately I was like, wow, I want to see that.
Yeah, and it's got Liam Cunningham as Captain Elliot, Davos Seaworth from Game of Thrones.
Nice, that's awesome.
I mean, maybe he's a little typecast as ship's captain, but he's such a good ship's captain. Like, he's excellent in it. So I definitely think the Cultists should, if you like Bram Stoker's Dracula, you should watch The Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Awesome. I'm really glad that you brought that one up, and now I definitely feel like I need to go see it.
Okay, cool.
We'd like to thank you for joining the Nightshade Cult.
And until we meet again, we're wishing you unpleasant dreams.